Japan and the Philippines have recently discussed about the maritime border pertaining to the Sea of Philippines or the Philippine Seas. So basically it's like we draw a line, north of this line belongs to Japan, south of this line belongs to the Philippines. So they're ours. No one can do that. No country can claim international waters as their own. That's why it's called international waters. Why do you do that? You look at the map, we can see that it's all about China. They want to contain China, especially when Japan, at the current stage, sees China as a threat. So does the Philippines. So, no one can claim international waters, and this cannot be done. But there's one more thing on top of this. It's more towards the Japan. Hi, Leslie Go here. So, in between Japan and Philippines, there is a group of islands is towards the south of Japan, east of Taiwan, and it's north of Philippines, but it's not that close to Philippines. This group of islands is called Ryukyu Islands. Two of the islands are famous. One is Okinawa. We all know the US has military bases on the island. And the other island is north of Taiwan. It's called, in Chinese, it's called 钓鱼岛. And it belongs to the Ryukyu, it's one of the Ryukyu Islands. And at this juncture, China and Japan are fighting over the sovereignty of this island, 钓鱼岛. So the Ryukyu Island has two famous islands in the group. Because of Okinawa, all along we thought that, well, at least the general public think that this group of island belongs to Japan. But it's not. They do not belong to Japan. Why is that so? Okay. Before we move on, let's turn back the clock and look into the history. This group of island, Ryukyu Island, belonged to a kingdom called Ryukyu Kingdom. It had its own flag, its own culture, its own language, so on and so forth. From 1429 to 1872. So in 1872, Japan's Meiji government invaded it and took it. Now, I want to sidetrack a bit. So, from the Ryukyu people perspective, Japan was an invader. It came and took what they have. It's very different from Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party was not an invader. They were Chinese. Taiwanese were Chinese. Or the Hans Group, both are Hans Group. So there was no invasion. We have to be clear on this. So I see this is the Ryukyu Islands, the Ryukyu Kingdom, and the Meiji government. It's a very good example relating to the Chinese Communist Party and Taiwan. Okay, now let's back to the Ryukyu Kingdom. Then, during World War II, of course, Japan lost the control of this group of islands to the US. the US set this island as a base and then move and charge towards the mainland of Japan. Now, after World War II, the Cairo Declarations and the Potsdam's Proclamation said that Japan only has the sovereign rights over the 4 main islands. The Ryukyu Islands were not included. So basically, after World War II, the drop of the 2 atomic bombs, Japan got back the 4 main islands, excluding the Ryukyu Islands. Now, so from the end of World War II until 1971-72, US, through the San Francisco Treaty, which was supposedly signed by the US and the allies, that includes China and Soviet Union, but only signed by the US and Japan. And in that treaty, Japan got back the administrative rights of the Ryukyu Islands, including Okinawa. So, but the thing is that administrative right does not equal to sovereign right. So even at that time, Ryukyu Island, after World War II, 1971, the San Francisco Treaty, so on and so forth, Ryukyu Islands still do not belong to Japan. That's why at this juncture, Japan has no right to claim that part of the waters where this group of Ryukyu Islands are. Because the sovereign status is contestable, is still questionable, right? And so far, actually until recently, China raised the questions about indigenous residents of Okinawa at the UN. This issue surfaced, right? Otherwise, I would think that because the US has military bases on Okinawa, well, no one dare to say anything. But no one dare to say anything doesn't mean that it belongs to Japan. So with this in questions, it is very hard for Japan to say that, to set up for Japan and the Philippines to set up the first island chain, because that part of the waters do not belong to you. That's why it is not possible to do it. When Japan and the Philippines can say whatever they want, can discuss whatever they want, can issue joint statements as many times as they want, but China will not recognize that. China will continue to send its navy, the aircraft carrier, the battleships to the area, because two parties cannot decide on this international waters matters. Just can't do it. That's why I think, of course, this is just, how should I say it? With the US behind the scene, military bases on Okinawa. Of course, the US will continue to back the idea that Japan owns these islands. And but I don't think China has the intention of say, oh no, they don't belong to Japan. No, I'm going to take it. No, I don't think China will do that. And I believe, I reckon China just use this the unclear sovereign status of the Ryukyu Islands to make things difficult for the US, Japan, and the Philippines to try to set up to revise the first island change. Of course, this is just the beginning. There will be more to come from the US, from Japan, to contain the rise of China. There's no doubt about that. Okay, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.